For the reasons I cited earlier, Canada intends to recognize the State of Palestine at the 80th session of the United Nations General Assembly in September 2025.
So certainly we're seeing a number of Western countries take positions they hadn't taken before on a two-state solution. Before the French made their declaration, it was frankly the Irish, the Norwegians, and the Spanish who had moved. We're now up to, I think, 150 countries worldwide that recognize the State of Palestine. It's a member of the General Assembly. I think there are real limits to what non-US Western countries can do. They don't have the leverage. The EU is preoccupied with security issues in Europe. There's a war in Ukraine and so forth. So I think we have to recognize there are limits to what a European or Westo-Euro or global coalition can do. But it also reflects a concern that the Trump administration isn't doing anything very useful. And of course, let's remember that although he kind of waffles on it, the Trump administration it was Donald Trump who rolled out the idea of driving the Palestinian population out of Gaza and turning it into a real estate development. That enabled the Israelis to start talking more explicitly about what is essentially ethnic cleansing and forced displacement. The U.S. is co-funding the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which is a complete travesty. It's working about as well as every humanitarian agency warned us it would work. So we have this kind of almost calculated famine right now in Gaza. So the U.S. really isn't providing very, very effective leadership. There's growing domestic pressure, particularly. I mean, it's sad that it takes starving children for people perhaps to start moving on the Palestinian issue, but that has had its effect. But still, we should not expect a peace process anytime soon. I would argue that the October 7th attacks and then the Israeli reaction have damaged the prospects for peace for a generation in Israel and Palestine. But precisely because of that, it's important to lay down the marker that whenever you come to the realization, whenever you are ready to talk about peace, or maybe the international community is willing to shove you in that direction more forcefully, it's going to have to be on the basis of self-determination for both peoples, security for both peoples, and two states. So I think more fundamentally, it represented a view that the prospect for a two-state solution was being badly eroded, and that therefore we had to kind of double down on our support for an eventual Palestinian state, saying the only way in which we think there will ever be peace in that part of the world will be if Palestinians also enjoy rights of self-determination and there is a Palestinian state living alongside the state of Israel in peace and security. So it was, although of course it is occurring in the context of the horrors of Gaza, it's also pointing to longer term issues in terms of the damage being done to a two-state solution. As countries and populations begin to recognize that we have a belligerent occupation of a people who are denied political rights, a situation that the International Court of Justice sort of indirectly likened to apartheid, and that risks becoming permanent, I think it will raise questions about legal issues and trade issues. For example, why are products produced in illegal Israeli settlements, which virtually everyone in the Western world considers a war crime? I mean, they're not just, we call them illegal, but they're illegal because they're a war crime. Will those goods be permitted into the European Union? Will there be movement there? That's a massive market if the European Union moves. Will people who hold official positions in settlements, mayors, administrators, police chiefs, security chiefs, will they be admitted in future, in 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, into countries? If you were a Russian administrator in Russian-occupied Ukraine, you would not be allowed to enter Canada if we knew that. If you're a mayor of a settlement, if you're a security chief at a settlement, there may be a point in which we say, hang on, we consider settlements to be war crimes. This is occupied territory. So I think it moves us in the direction of using legal and trade levers in a way that most of the Western world hasn't. Mark Carney said this was an independent decision, which it kind of wasn't because the French helped move us along there. But when he said it's an independent decision, it was a code word for we didn't ask the Americans. He wouldn't have said that in the press conference unless he knew that that notion that Canada's policies aren't made in Washington is something that really reverberates.
If Canada moves forward with recognizing the Palestinian state, is that a deal breaker for you?
Well, we're going to see. No, I didn't like what they said, but that's their opinion. I didn't like that. Not a deal breaker, but
I think most ordinary Canadians will say, okay, that kind of makes sense. We don't really have any polling on this decision in Canada, but we know in the UK it was about a 3-to-1 margin in favor of doing it. And a lot of people don't have strong views on it one way or another. It was always a constraint on the Canadian government about what the domestic ramifications would be. The cabinet itself, the caucus itself was somewhat split. I think some of the careful phrasing of the press conference was attempts to manage differences within caucus and cabinet, but Carney has proven a fairly adept politician, and I don't think he would have done it if he thought it was gonna hurt him. Canada never had a very clear identity. It was kind of not American and, bilingual and multicultural. That feeling of we are really not American has been absolutely amplified. And in looking for partnerships, well, who else is there? It's not going to be the Chinese. We have other kinds of issues with the Chinese. It's going to be Europe. And so I think you'll hear a lot of Canadians wanting a closer relationship with Europe. And we've seen this is the trade stuff has already been happening. This is an example of the political stuff that those discussions were France, Britain, Canada about doing this.
Second. Okay, let's start on the left. Start on the left, yeah. Lula, Second. Okay, let's start on the left. Start on the left, yeah. Lula.